I would like to tell my experience with ghosts.
Oh, what's your experience with ghosts?
When I was a kid, my family lived away from all the small towns, rather secluded in the middle of the woods. There were two neighborhood kids around, but we hung out anyway. I was riding bike with one of them, an Axl Rose looking. We were probably around 11 years old. We would ride our bikes to the end of the road, surrounded by woods and away from all adult supervision. We lived on a dead end, so we would ride to the intersection that turned onto our road. Then we would just hop off our bikes, pull them over the slope so no one would see them from the road, and then just wander around the woods. We liked this area because it was away from all the areas we've already explored around our houses and off onto the trails. The landscape was weird here. Around the intersection, it just sloped everywhere. Over one hill was another, and then it would eventually level off into the woods. And then there was another downward slope into further woods. It all looked different. We would just explore and horse around. We would pick up sticks, hit them against trees, pretend they looked like guns. We would run up and slide down the slopes, and we would find paintballs just lying around. We would just mess with those and use the paint on the inside of each pellet. We would just run around and let our active imaginations take over. It was fun for a while, but eventually we headed back towards our bikes. But on the way back to our bikes, it was the slope right before the one we hit our bikes behind. We both crawled up and over this steep pine needle and dirt slope, peeking our heads over. But we had seen something that had definitely not been there before. We had thought it even might have been living. From what I can remember, it was just an orange hoodie, just floating there. It was perfectly filled out as if someone was inside it, but it had no face, and it had no legs, and it wasn't close enough to any of the trees to have been hanging off a branch. Having just crawled over the slope, both me and my neighbor were already down on the ground, almost completely hidden and peeking over the top. I remember looking at my neighbor and back at the thing. We were both completely frozen in fear. We had both seen it. We both had seen the exact same thing. I would have understood if it had just been my young, overactive imagination taking over at the time. After all it is just a memory, over a decade old now. How could I say that I have seen what I had saw? But my neighbor, we've talked about it several times since. He had always been far more jaded than me. He had definitely not been the type to be afraid of such small things that he might have even seen before. But he had always recounted that he had seen the exact same thing as me, and that it was creepy, and that we were both just frozen in fear. Back when it happened, neither of us knew what we were gonna do. We just kept looking at each other and back at the thing. Just an orange, perfectly filled out hoodie floating in the middle of the woods. No legs, and no face. Eventually, we worked up the nerve that on the count of 3, we would run to our bikes and get out of there. After all, they were just over the next slope, before the road. And I don't rightly know if we ever finished that countdown, because as soon as we made a noise, it turned towards us, fully showing us the emptiness of the inside of its hood. And we ran anyway. We quite literally scrambled for our bikes, in overwhelming fear. We dragged them just over the slope leading to the road, and rode off, not daring to slow down until we got far enough away that it couldn't possibly have followed us. And that was just an experience that we took with us. It just happened. We both have each other to account for it. But that's just about the only proof we could ever hope to have. We've brought this up several times since, but he would just say nothing about it, besides the same 2 things. It was just a thing that happened, and it was creepy. Despite the second testimony, I've always tried to rationalize the entire thing to myself. There were 1 or 2 other houses around that side of the woods after all. It's not like we haven't seen proof that others had been around. We've always just seen paintballs and junk just lying around. In fact, if there were paintballs around, it wouldn't have been too unlikely for someone to have been around the area, wearing a paintball mask and heavy clothing, maybe even some camo pants, and maybe our imaginations just did the rest. But unless my memory is corrupted, it just doesn't make sense. None of those things would have made a person invisible. We had both known what paintball masks look like. We both know what camo looks like. We were both frozen in fear. There was just nothing there. It was just one terrifying occurrence that happened in my life, and there's just nothing else I could take from it. Uh, 3 to 5 yards. Less than.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, if someone was naked, I think you would notice.
Oh no, we would have noticed, like, the whole thing was that, there were no legs, and there was no
Yeah.
face.
Yeah. Was it a hoodie or something like that attached to, like, a string attached to a branch or something like that, and it was just, like, turning to you like the wind was blowing?
No, that wouldn't have made sense to us, like, at the time. It was filled out like a person was wearing it, and it moved in a way that it just kind of turned its head towards us.
Huh. That is strange. Not gonna lie.
Now,
That's like mannequin
I've
territory right there.
now, me and my neighbor, both older, I've talked to him since, and I would understand why I would be frozen in fear, but like, I considered my neighbor that I was with to be jaded. I don't really know why he would just be afraid of a hoodie hanging off a branch or just like a normal dude hanging out in the woods.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there might be some like implications there, but I don't know why he would see it in an irrational way, like the same way I did.
I think the way that you both saw it in an irrational way maybe says it could have been something weird.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's just gonna be one of those things you'll never know.
The invisible pantsless man.
Oh no. Invisible man gets a hoodie.
Oh no, we were minors.
Oh no. But he was invisible, so you couldn't see anything.
Hey, it's still illegal.
Which one shall I tell you? I'll tell you about one of the houses that I used to live in. Um, so in this house, I remember sitting down in my couch to watch TV once in a while, right?
Yeah,
And I'd watch anything from maybe cartoons to maybe a spooky show once in a while to something science related or whatever. Can be anything. I remember one of these times, it was probably around like, I don't know, 5 to 7 in the evening, just sitting down and watching something and seeing out the corner of my eye some shape down the hallway. The hallway's not very big, it's like maybe like 15 feet or so, maybe probably less than that.
that's a
But I
lot of
remember,
feet. How can you handle all those feet around you?
um, besides takes a feet, but yeah, I saw something kind of moving towards me, like a black figure of sorts. And, you look over there, of course, you don't see anything. But you look back towards the TV, and out of the corner of your eye, you see something moving away. And it's like something is pacing back and forth. In the same house, there were other things going on too. Like, I remember once when I was just right in the dining room talking to my stepfather about something. I don't even know what it was about. But I was poked by something very, I would say, violently. And I heard a voice say, "Hey," like demanding like attention of some sort. Of course, I asked my stepdad, like, "Did you see anything?" And he's like, "No, you just jumped." And be like, "I was just poked by something, and something that said, 'Hey.'" You're like, "Really?" "Yeah." So like it's just a few random experiences like that in that house. Like it's just kind of weird. Like obviously there's no one else in the house besides me and him at the time. Maybe my brother was on the couch, but I don't think he was really doing stuff like that at the moment. So it's just that was a weird experience that I can't really rationalize in any particular way.
Oh my god, you know what it must have been?
What?
You're not gonna like this.
What?
It must have been a man living in your walls and or crawl spaces.
That's even creepier.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
happened multiple times throughout true crime history. I
Yeah, there's
hate
some weird.
that thought, but like there's footage of
Yeah,
people
I
with
remember seeing stuff like
apartments.
that.
Oh god, there's footage of this house or apartment, I don't remember. But like there's this crawl space, this attic area, like right above the kitchen. The family kind of go to bed, and just like in the middle of the night, the camera picks up this really skinny lady kind of crawl out from like the attic crawl space
Yeah.
and kind of somehow manage to climb down by using like stuff on top of the counters, the microwave and whatever,
Yeah.
and just kind of goes over to the fridge, takes some food, munches on it, and then she
There,
hears someone, so she immediately gets the chair and something to stack on top of the microwave or whatever, the counter, and then climbs back up like nothing happened.
yeah, that's quite the video. That stuff is like really creepy when you think about it. Yeah, I don't think it was that. I think, there was actually near that house there was like a small graveyard of sorts, like less than 500 feet away. It had like what 5 to 10 graves or something like that. It was like family size. Yeah.
The one from when I was in fourth and fifth grade is I knew a kid who would constantly talk about how he could see ghosts. It was kind of his thing. It's what we knew him as. So in our group of friends, he was like the dude who always says he could see ghosts and whatever. We'd be kind of interested in that. I had another friend who said his dad worked at Nerf. I remember him mentioning these creatures that would kind of torment him because he can see ghosts. This person moved away like after that grade, came back in high school. He just said like, yeah, I used to say things like that a lot. He never mentioned anything like that in high school. Kind of like his cool spooky friend that can see ghosts in elementary school, and then like high school, he was just kind of my friend that had absolutely nothing to do with ghosts. My other story is I had this very close friend. I hung around all the way through middle school. He slept over at my house, like, all the time. He slept on the floor. We would just kind of be middle schoolers and would just rehearse 3 days grace until eventually we passed out. Early one morning, it was still kind of dark.
Yeah, like 4 or 5.
I remember seeing my friend startled and looking in the direction of the corner in which the door was just around. He saw this spooky dog came in and kind of went away. I'm imagining like a black dog and like the eyes kind of glowing in like the very dim light. I did have a black dog at the time, a black lab. Her name was Natasha. The thing that was unlikely about it being her though is because she has never been allowed up the stairs and kind of developed a fear of going up the stairs because she learned that she has a hard time going downstairs. If my dog Natasha came up the stairs and stared at my friend, it would be very unlikely for her to have gone back down the stairs. I have a black lab now that like has no problem with stairs, but knows she's not supposed to go up or down the stairs. She hasn't been caught, but like every once in a while, our current dog, we have found her with chewing on items that she could have only gotten from upstairs, and she must have taken when like nobody was around. Oh yeah, it could have been sleep paralysis.
Yeah. So, do you believe in ghosts?
I hope they don't exist.
You hope they don't exist.
There's a sort of paranoia that's there. I think most people have it, but they justify it in different ways.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you like that video, please consider subscribing to encourage me to make more. I'm currently recording this in front of a fan.